world is continuously changing and we cannot stop it. So these kind of threats may come from time to time and in different occupations. Acknowledging it, accepting it, and proactively managing it becomes important. And is one way that we can do that. I believe that everybody have your own strengths, and then you can shine in the right stage. You maybe have to change your stage throughout your career. So be ready for this kind of change. With this positive and optimistic mindset, you'll do better.
Hi everyone, welcome to CUHK Podcast. I'm Brady, a student from International Business and Chinese Enterprise program, and the student host for today's episode. Work is more than just a paycheck. It's a big part of how we see ourselves. With today's economic uncertainty and layoffs, many of us feel anxious about our future or even anxious about our professional identities. But what if these tough moments could actually turn into a spark of growth? Today, we are truly honored to have Professor Dora Lau, Associate Professor of CUHK's Department of Management. Hello, Professor Lau.
Hi, Brady.
Before we dive in, don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel and also follow us on social media for latest updates. To begin, shall we explore why many of us feel uncertain about their jobs and professional identities?
The world is getting very uncertain and a lot of changes is happening. For example, the geopolitical environment is very uncertain. You know that from the international environment, we know that there are much uncertainties that will affect trading, affect manufacturing, so that these companies will actually consider moving their work sites to other places. That will cause potential work loss or shrinking in some occupations. Another factor is very intense competition from nearby environments. We all read from the news that, for example, very famous restaurant chains actually are closing down. So because they face the competition from Shenzhen, for example. A third factor that we all know is about AI and the technology changes. This is continuously happening. And for example, the use of robots will, for example, reduce the job demands for waiters and waitresses. We all know that we go to restaurants and now we order by ourselves. Again, they require fewer waiters and waitresses. So these will bring changes to the workplace, and many of the workers may feel threatened because of that.
With these questions that or so many uncertainties that you mentioned, I think I've come across the term occupational identity threats. Can you explain what is that, and is this something that even people have a stable job, they can still experience these threats?
Everybody has an identity, and occupational identity is one type. That means how one defines themselves in terms of their job. For example, some people may introduce themselves as a lawyer, a doctor, or a teacher. That's their occupational identity. Sometimes this identity may feel threatened when there's potential harm to the value, to the meaning, and also to the enactment of such profession. For example, teachers, professors, for example, we all face a lot of a very rigid curriculum sometimes, or even very standardized testing. Teachers may feel that, my autonomy is being reduced. So they may feel that, my identity, the way that I enact my profession may be limited, so that may cause some kind of threat, although the teachers still have a job. Another example is that there's a lot of administrative workloads now for teachers, even in addition to teaching. And some teachers may feel I don't have time to care for my students anymore. That will again let them feel that, my enactment of my teaching is actually being threatened.
You just mentioned the example of teachers, right? I'm just wondering, do you think this kind of worries or threats that they are facing right now could actually turn into something can inspire them for growth or any changes at their work?
This is a very good question. We have conducted a research study to study whether this is possible. So, and then we collected data from two different companies. One is manufacturing companies, because we feel a lot of workers, especially in the assembly line, They may feel like their job may be replaced by robots or AI in the future, so they may feel threatened more. So we choose that as one of the samples. And the other one, it's kind of more neutral. It's kind of a financing company. So we choose both of that to compare whether workers in these kind of like settings, if they feel threatened, what would they do? What kind of like effects that will be. So, and our finding is very interesting. We find that under this kind of threat, employees will react to cope with that by doing some kind of crafting. And then if the crafting is appropriate, that will create some possible consequences like better work performance or even like a more engagement in the job.
That's actually really fascinating on your research on how like employee using job crafting to thrive despite challenges. And since you brought this up, like, can you tell us more what job crafting means and how it differs from the management decisions?
Sure, Brady. Job crafting is about like changing one's work boundaries. As any job actually has some kind of boundaries, and there are some required work elements that are written in the job description. But beyond that, employees have discretions about whether they want to do more or not. So in terms of job crafting, there are three different dimensions that employees can consider. For example, the first one is task. That is like they can do more tasks, or for example, like helping a newcomer, which is not a required component, but they want to do more. Second part is relational. That is the people that they work with. So any job, I think most jobs now you have to work with different type people. So whether you want to stay with the minimal or want to expand your network, that's another dimension. The third one is the cognitive side. Cognitive side means that how do you perceive your job? What is the kind of your value of your job? Brady, do you drink coffee?
Yeah, I do.
Okay, so you must know the job of a barista. So barista, the basic job component is to make coffee for customers, right? But some barista will see themselves beyond that. They may see themselves as a community builder. They have a coffee shop so that people can come here together, enjoy coffee. They may make, of course, the barista will make good coffee for everyone, but they also introduce customers to each other so that they can build a community together. So this is a different way beyond the meaning of the job. It's crafted by the job holder, him or herself. So, and this kind of crafting is very self-initiated. It's not required by other people, but if the employees want to do that, they will kind of discretionary, use their own discretion to build that. So this is the nature of job crafting.
I really like the example you just mentioned, like taking barista as an example, like they're doing something jobs or duties beyond their own like job duties. And I think for job crafting, definitely helping them to create some meaningful work messages within their work. But I'm just curious though, like, is there any other types of job crafting?
Yes, there are different types. Let me introduce you to two types, two main types. First type is called approach crafting. Approach crafting meaning to enlarge the work boundaries in terms of tasks. That means you do more than is required. Relational, that is you meet with more people. Or also actively engage in changing the work processes or the structure of that, and then adding more new skills, new knowledge into the job. That's called approach crafting. Like, for example, you go to hospitals, they are like hospital cleaners, right? So usually it's kind of like low status and low pay for this kind of job. But some of these like hospital cleaners can kind of like change their own kind of perception of themselves as like a patient caretaker. That is their job to clean the floor, for example, is to provide a hygienic and safe environment for the patients. So just beyond just by cleaning, if you take that kind of role, then you may kind of think about, maybe they would talk to the patients more. They enlarge the social domain, providing some empathy if needed, so that they would like treat themselves as more like a patient caretaker rather than just a cleaner by itself. So that's one example of approach job crafting. The other crafting technique is called avoidance crafting. Avoidance crafting is reducing your work boundaries. Of course, you cannot reduce the required components, otherwise you get fired. But other than that, for example, social-wise, if colleagues ask you for happy hour after work, you can say no, right? It's discretionary. So if you do that, then you reduce your social domain, or you avoid some of the parts of the work that you feel threatened, you don't like. Then also it's a kind of avoidance kind of techniques. Both techniques actually are quite possible functional responses from occupational identity threats. We see that from the research that when people feel threatened, they will do more approach and do more avoidance job crafting. Both are possible. We can do that because although they look very opposite, right, to each other, but they are possible because you can do more in one domain and do less in another. So that's kind of like usually what we found. But interestingly, only approach crafting will have positive consequences, meaning that employees will be more engaged and perform better.
I see. So I think that's a really interesting distinction between like the approach and also the avoidance job crafting. And I think you just mentioned something like the approach job crafting bring the positive influences. Like, can you tell us like what's the secret power, or, like secret source of the approach crafting that can enhance the total like job performance or the overall satisfaction of the jobs?
Sure. Approach job crafting means that you enlarge, right, your work boundaries. You talk to more people, or you may increase your task, increase your knowledge. All these will bring extra resources for the job holders, him or herself, doing things that will be more matching to the upcoming trends, or having more information, useful information to get the job done. Plus, if there is some crafting to the meaning of the job, like changing the title, like the hospital cleaner example, they may feel like, oh, this is very meaningful job. Not just a low paying or low status job, it's adding meaning. Patients will actually benefit from it. If the employees see the meaning of their job, they will be more motivated. So the motivation will help them to be engaged and also to perform better. On the other hand, like you may say, oh, okay, if I still have a job, I may feel that way. What if I get laid off, right? That's kind of the worst scenario. Even if you get laid off, like the job crafting, the approach job crafting, the additional resources is not with the organization, it's with the job holders, him or herself. So these additional like knowledge, resources, networks, you still carry on to your next job search. So that will be helpful for you to be able to find the jobs, next job better. And maybe another organization will treasure that.
We have talked a lot about like what job crafting matters, and like we also mentioned like something like the secret power of the approach job crafting. Perhaps like I mean the audience, including myself, would be really interested. Do you have any practical steps like we can make in order to start our job crafting?
That's very true. First of all, I have to say that job crafting is a discretionary activity. And some jobs have more discretion, some jobs have less. And then higher rank employees have more discretion, and lower rank employees have less discretion. That's for sure. But that doesn't mean that, for example, an entry level employee will have no discretion. Usually that's not the case. Though we have some. I can give you some examples, practical tips on how to do that. For example, from task-wise, how do you add task, right? For example, that will mean like taking the opportunities to, for example, go to conferences that relate to the occupations, learning the most trendy knowledge, and also thinking about how can it apply to the job that you are currently doing. So basically, it's a continuous process of upgrading yourself, thinking about suggestions that you can make your process better. That's one way, the task-wise. Relationally, for entry-level workers, I think the most important thing is to find mentorship, people who have more experienced and also trustworthy mentors who can provide you with like feedback and information. Job crafting itself is a creative kind of like activity, right? So creative can be in all sorts of directions. Some may be helpful, some maybe not. So mentors who are experienced and trustworthy may provide you with the feedback that will help you to kind of find ways to do it better. So that will be another way. In terms of the cognitive side, I think it's important to know what you're good at, or what you want from the job. So I know that for undergraduates, money is important because you have to make a living. That's for sure. Um, but besides money, is there anything else you want to do, like, or you want your job to help you express? For example, like whether it creates meaning for the community, for the society. If you can find a job that can match your strengths, that you can contribute, then in that sense, that meaning will help you to kind of like have motivated to perform better. Those are some of the ways that entry level workers may consider doing.
Yeah, I think that's such a really practical approach. So I'm wondering, like combining these three dimensions, it feels really actionable for anyone and also for entry levels. But how about the managers? Like, if taking a higher level, like what steps for managers they should take?
For managers, their role is not only to value their own performance, but their subordinates' performance as well. If their subordinates feel threatened, probably the managers should be able to notice that maybe motivational level is low, turnover is high, then those are really proxies that something is wrong. So that managers should be able to sense that and then to find ways to deal with that. So how to deal with that, for example, the managers should think about like whether you welcome employees to job craft. Some may, some may not. So if managers want to encourage employees to job craft, then they may consider about encouraging employees to go to workshops that about the occupational upcoming trends, so they learn more AIs, encourage them to do so verbally, and also like sharing that the message that these activities are welcome, because actually not all companies or managers will welcome that. So employees sometimes will have like doubts. Can I do that? Do I do extra things? Will I be penalized? So employee managers need to let the employees know that this is actually welcome. So this is something first thing. And then the other thing is that some incentives will be helpful. For example, if employees go to a luncheon or conference to learn something, right? You can invite them to come back and share what they have learned to the other employees who did not go. So that will also like encourage the employees to do more of that and then feel like valued. And the third thing is that they can also think about giving feedback. If the job crafting direction is like going a little bit uncontrollable, then managers can give timely and specific feedback and say, okay, maybe doing A is good, maybe doing B may not be so helpful. So employees will have a sense of, oh, what kind of activities are welcome and whatnot.
Yeah, I think it's pretty, like for managers, it's pretty critical on their role, like inviting the team to have autonomy at the same time without any confusion leading in the team. So I think that's a really critical role for the manager. So shall we move on like to a higher level? Like
Sure.
what can organizations do? Like
Ah,
if they want to build a culture that encourages job crafting and helps their employees to like grow during time of change?
For organizations, I think two factors are important to build a culture. First of all, is the leadership. Whether leaders favor job crafting or want job crafting to be part of the culture, what the leaders say, what the leaders do becomes very important. Leaders can be a role model, like welcoming like job crafting, setting out like what kind of job crafting activities are welcome. So and then give employees some discretions from time to time, so that they kind of get familiar with this type of activities, because it's not written in the job description. And also set up some incentive schemes that welcome this type of like activities. For example, training workshop, telling employees how to job craft, and then also like providing feedback again, like similar to the managerial role. And then also encouraging creativity, because job crafting is part of, it's almost like a creativity work, right? For example, welcoming job improvement suggestions, things like that. So that will also help to build a strong culture in job crafting.
I think it's really inspiring to hear that. Like when we're talking about an organization or company to do like encourage this kind of positive culture by doing like with the tailored incentive, maybe some workshops or some positive feedbacks timely, and then also with the positive leadership that really matters for a company. I believe it's not just like every situation are like the same, right? Is there any limitations or any contexts or roles that limit job crafting?
Yes. For some jobs, they have very strict protocols. Like, for example, military or like law enforcement officers, they have strict protocols that they have to follow. And individuals may not be so freely job craft, but they can think about ways to job craft and kind of like propose and see if that's acceptable. The other type of work is like more interdependent type of work. For example, teamwork or like assembly line workers. That is, if my output becomes your input, then that's what we call interdependence. So if I change my output, then it will affect your input, right? So it will be very problematic if I just freely change it. So a lot of times that doesn't mean that you cannot do job crafting, but job crafting has to be done at a team level then. Everybody needs to understand the consequence. If I change my output, how would it affect your input? I have to consider it all together in order to have successful job crafting.
Yeah, right. There are certainly some limitations within job crafting, such as the stricter protocols and also having a higher interdependency within the team that's with causing the limitation. And perhaps we can keep this in mind. And looking into the future, like, do you think how these like occupational identity threats and job crafting, these kind of concepts can help us adapt to the changing of the world?
Very good question. World is continuously changing, and we cannot stop it. So these kind of threats may come from time to time and in different occupations. Threat is uncomfortable experience, so nobody likes it. But since it's inevitable in many sense, then acknowledging it, accepting it, and proactively managing it becomes important. And job crafting is one way that we can do that.
That's really powerful perspective. Like understanding this concept can help workers to navigate their uncertain future. For those who may feel anxious about their future or like feeling uncertain about their professional jobs, what advice could you give to us like to navigate under this uncertainty?
Sure, I can have like three pieces of advice, and you may consider. First piece is that for fresh graduates, the choice of career is important because some occupations are more under threat than others. So do your homework and analyze the occupations to see they are like whether it's a growing one or like a shrinking one. So growing ones will give you more opportunities, while the shrinking ones probably will give you more threat. Second piece of advice is always have a positive and growth oriented mindset. Sometimes like you're in occupations and you feel threatened, but don't forget to keep growing, keep a kind of growth mindset, continue to job craft so that you add value to yourself. So you may not be able to continue in a current profession or this company, but you have another chance, right? But keep growing and keep learning so that you will have this value that you can carry with you to the next job or industry. Thirdly, trust yourself, believe in yourself. I believe that everybody have your own strengths, and then you can shine in the right stage. This may not be the right stage for you at the moment. Find another one. And also with the world's changing, you maybe have to change your stage throughout your career. You may not have only one stage throughout your life. So be ready for this kind of change. And then with this positive and optimistic mindset, you'll do better.
That's such a valuable insight. And thank you for sharing that. And I think the last bit of like a great reminder that even if we face challenges or like uncertainties in the future, we always have to believe that there are ways to meet these challenges with resilience and creativity. Once again, thank you so much, Professor Lau, for sharing your wisdom and help us thrive and grow in the future. If you enjoyed this episode, please give us a like, share this video with your friends, and don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel. Stay tuned for our next episode. We'll invite more CUHK members to explore fascinating topics in the future. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time. Bye.
Bye bye.